application works more or less in the same manner as we have been doing whatever we've been doing, but it's different in a sense. Because we are simply saying, like what we did in C, we'll be having a record of certain elements that we would need to work with. So we'd want to go to our folder, which is date 25. And then for our date 25, we've got all these things that we've done already. I'll try and maybe put them in specific context based on the lessons that we have done. But now we want to actually make a PHP application. So the PHP application we are making, we are then going to go through some of the concepts that we need to create a PHP application and how we then place specific values within our PHP application. So we'll name our project by having a folder. And then this folder, we can call it school for easy recognition. So it will be school. And if we come back to our diploma 25, right, we should be able to see the following, which is the index page of this particular folder. But we want to then see school, which is our PHP application that we want to actually design and have certain things about this school. So we are still learning the same concepts that we've had, but we want to design something else so that each of these elements will start. There will come a time where I'll say you should then go on to finish off because we've done the basic layout of each element that we are supposed to have. So we then go to our note editor. We can also use a different note editor. For example, there's this one called Notepad++, which works in more or less the same way as our Visual Code. We can also change the text so that it's visible. I wish there was a way that you could just make it large at once. I think let's use Notepad. For now, let's use Notepad for the purposes of the projection. We can still work with Notepad, and Notepad is easier in the aspect that I can just change the size of the font and then it becomes visible. Let's change it once more so that we can be able to view. Right, I think that's a little bit better. So, like we said, we want to create our PHP application, and our application would be similar to what we have done before. So let's just open maybe a previous website. We just want to copy some context. So we'd want to just maybe, in fact, let's not copy, let's redo it. We are learning. Right, so we've got HTML, we've got our heading, we've got our title, we've got the closing title, We've got our head as well. We've got our body. We've also got our body tag. So what this then means is we've got our page and we've got what we want to see within our page. So we go to File, we then go to Save As, we come to XAMPP, htdocs, D25 school, we then say index.php, like that. We save in all files, and then we click on Save. So the disadvantage with some of these other platforms is, as you can see, with Notepad, it's not telling you whether you've made a mistake or not. So when you're working with Notepad, you then need to know what you're doing. If you're working with Visual Code or Notepad++, you can then get some hints or suggestions on how you can actually fix your problems or your issues as you progress. And so this is our school system. And then maybe we just need to put hello, welcome. Click on save. We come back to our index of school. If we refresh, we then actually then get hello, welcome. And so this is a different system altogether. We are then now working with a system. And then with working with a system, we then need to know some of the elements that we need to put and some of the errors we might find when defining or creating a system. Here are some of the things that we then need to do. For example, you remember we said we're working with PHP and we said PHP is a scripting language, and so for a start, we'll just go back to some of the basics that we have said. We said we can put our question mark. We have our PHP. We then have an output whereby we can say echo hello with a semicolon. We click on save. We refresh, and then we get hello. And that's part of what we have learned so far. We've also said we can create variables, we can create whatever, and we proceed. But now what we want to do is we want to add to this, because this is just basic. But we need to have more information that we can attest to this. So let's say on the one end, we now need to create a specific page that assists this one. So this is our main page. And remember, we said we can be able to call other pages to give us whatever it is that we want to get. And so we are then saying, since we are dealing with a system, we then now need to define what each system or what each system attribute should do. So if we do our lectures or if we do our programming like what we are doing now, we'll have a problem because each time that we design something, we need to have a plan. So the plan that we then need to have should be able to tell us how we can get to what we want to get to. And so for a school system, let's have some notes so that we can follow those notes. I think for the notes, I can use this one since it's not very visible, but we can having a general idea of what we want to do. Right. So it's a school system. What we want to do is we want to say, you as the programmer, you have been tasked to create a system that students can be able to use. Right? These students should be able to do some of the following. They should be able to register, right? Upon registration, they get approval, right? And then for the registration, we also then need to know, how are they registering? Are they just going to the website? Are they registering? Are they getting a link? How are they getting to register? For example, we have been working with Canvas, whereby I create you on the system, you get an email, you then get to create an account, and then you can see what is on the system. That's one way of doing it. So we could say the person who's responsible for the course can get your details. When they get your details, they then send you a link, and then that link, you can use that link to do whatever it is that you want to do. And then, so part of what we're doing now is what we'll then be calling the system design phase, whereby we then get to break down the system into smaller sections or into smaller segments that we can be able to actually work with. So for example, we're then saying, how do we want the student to be able to access the system? So they need to register. To register, they then get approval. So if we're to design something that follows the Canvas route, all we are saying is the assigned person, who can be maybe a technician or the lecturer, can work with a class list. And then that class list can then be used to distribute to the student email. Those student emails would then prompt the user to register. That's one way of doing it. And then, so we can then say register student email is required, right? And then the student is also prompted to create username. Student registers and accesses platform. Alil. So that's one side of the registration process. We are just trying to figure out what exactly do we want to do and how do we do it. The next thing we want is the login, log in, whereby we are saying users can access this side of the system, right? All they need is the username and a password, right? In the event that they forgot their password, and then, so the first bit would be the registration. If you are not registered, we should then be able to say, if you are not registered, it prompts you to request registration. So you can be able to request registration in the event that you want to. But I'm sure that won't be something that we need in the system. I don't know if it makes sense or if there's anyone with a different opinion. Okay, so we've got our register, we've got our login. The next thing that we need to know is the interface or the main page, which we can then say is access page, for lack of a better word, whereby now we need to know what this person can be able to access on our page. So we are designing whatever we want the system to have and then we then need to have an access page where everything happens. So that's where we then get to see the user details. We then get to see the course details. We then get to see the coursework. We also then get to see the student forum, and then they can also be able to log out. And it. So we're then saying with the access page, this is the landing page of the system. Right. Let's save this. Right. I don't know, are there any other aspects that you can think of that we might need? So we've got the register part, where they register and they get approval. We've got the login part. We've got the access page, whereby we're saying this is where everything is supposed to be and is supposed to start from. And then the next thing we then now need to do is maybe the following. Given this breakdown, we now know what our system is supposed to do. We want to be able to have students register. We want to be able to have people log in. We also want to be able to say, if you forget the password, you can be able to reset. We also want to have your user details. We also want to have your course details. We also want to have your coursework. We also want a student forum. And it. So already as it stands, we've got a general outlook of what we want our system to do. And with this now, we now know some of the things that we want from our system. And it. What can be the next stage after we have some of this information? What do you think we'll need next after this? Do we need to then start designing our page? Do we need to consider other options? Whether we've left out something? Do we need to have a database? Do we need to have a plan of our pages? Or something? What do you think comes next after this? What do you think comes next after this? We have an idea of what we want. We've also looked at how we design our databases. We've also looked at how we design our pages. We've also looked at how we work with our PHP. And this is some of the stuff that we need for this particular system. Because we said it's a school system, and we don't want it to be very complicated. We want to be able to design it and then have it run given the parameters. So what do you think is next? And our school system simply says hello, welcome, and hello. So we've got no code whatsoever. Yes. Yes. Saving our password and username. Not really, because saving of the password and username is done on the browser, not on the system itself. Because what we are saying is, if you remember with our, which one was it? Okay, maybe let's look at this one. I can just reduce it so that we see what we've got. This is one system that we can maybe have reference to, right? We are saying we want a username, we want a password, and we want to be able to log in, right? So as this system states, you can put your username, you can put your password, and then you log in. And then if you don't want to put your username or your password, you can also sign up, whereby we are saying we've got a username, we've got an email, we've got a password, and we can repeat the password. So in other words, we are saying this is now something that is done. It's a system that exists. But where we are now is we are trying to start from the idea first before we get to the system. So we then need to know what comes next after having the concept that we want to work with, and then we now want to get into making our system. Yes, the design comes next. But design, remember what we said a few days ago. We said the design, we need to at least know how some of these things are coming up. So if we are to design, we then need to know what each thing is supposed to do. So have a visual of what each element is supposed to do. The first element that we see before we even get into the system is the login page. So if we are to design, like he's saying, we start by designing the login page, whereby we are saying what comes to login page here. Right? We're then saying we've got username, we've got password. So in other words, these are inputs. And then we also need a login, which is a button. Is there anything else that we need? What is it? You will remember user. Okay, remember user, and this is a check. But question, do we need to remember the user if it's not a computer that we don't use? Yes or no? Because like we're saying, we are designing and we want to come up with a concept. We are putting it up with. And then we are saying everything that we are putting, we are thinking of all possibilities. So picture this. I come and I build your house. And then with your house, every door that is in that house links to every room in the house. Would I have been a smart builder? And did it? So in other words, some of the things that we then now need to actually plan in this design phase is what are all the possibilities that can be there. One such issue is, as we are designing anything, we then need to think, is it necessary to have a remember user option? Reason being, we are saying this is a system, right? I am part of your class. I interact with one of your classmates. They put remember you. I have asked for that laptop. What happens if I misuse that account? It's a possibility, isn't it? Same goes, can internet cafe. I know some of you might not know what I'm talking about. But from where I grew up, we used to have things called internet cafes where you would go and you'd use the internet because your phone would only text and call and you couldn't go on the internet. So we used things called internet cafes. So in those internet cafes, you just get in and make sure that when you are done, you remove everything. But sometimes your time ran out and you leave everything like that. So it's part of some of the things that you're supposed to at least know about designing our system. But we can leave it there. The next thing that we might need is what? What is the next thing that we might need after this? We've got our username, we've got our password, we've got our pattern, we've got our remember user. Yes. No, we don't want to sign up. We mentioned that we don't design it up. That's without sign up. Not united, we signed up. For example, if you remember when you were doing your email account, yes, forgot password, yes. Your email account and your email account, you never registered, and it. On password in the account. And it. So we want to create a system like that whereby the user has no option of registering. But the moment we say a school system, someone can register. In never now 10 how to register part of the system as place. Not I register, I the option get their password back if they forgot their password. If not, at stop. Because otherwise, family my accounts, then it defeats the purpose. So forgot password, and then this is a link. And it, what else? Is there anything else that we might need? Counterfeit. All right. I think one other aspect of our design we can work with is our access page. Right. Some of you are on your computers right now. You can verify with what's on your canvas. Your canvas obviously has something on it. And then what do we see when we get to that page? Because we want to sort of have an idea of what that is doing and have that concept on our page. Right? One element I can add offhand is we might need to have a student image. And because we're saying this is a student. Or rather, let's not put it as student, let's say user image, because we might have other users who are not students. So the first thing we want is a user image. What else do we want? Guys, there's information that we have there. Was that a suggestion? What else do we need? What else do we need? We can have a user image. Huh? A navigation bar. Okay, that's okay. Guys, some of these things we have been working with. Right, if you remember, with titles, some of these things. For example, let's go back. Which one was it? I think it's on index, right? Right. There's a part that I said user details. What details can we get? So we said user details. Someone said name, surname, ID, what else? Email. Anything else? Date of birth, you see, very critical. So name, surname, ID, email. Maybe reg number. Because we are saying this is for students, aren't it? We can leave it at that. We can definitely leave it at that. But my question is this. You register, didn't it? You enter into a system, didn't it? How do you know that you are the person who is registered? Yes. Okay. Okay. Not quite the answer that I was looking for, but we can work with it that way. Right. I'll put it this way. I'll go a little bit personal, but no offense. I'll go a little bit personal. In some of your phones, there's an application called Vault. I don't know why people have it, but I know it's there. And you put whatever you put in there, right? So first thing that you do is you get into the phone, it's got a password or it's a fingerprint. You do the fingerprint, that is. And then from the fingerprint, you then want to go to Vault. You also are then asked something else by Vault. Am I correct? Right. So in other words, what we are then saying is we need to also define how that is supposed to work. So we are saying on the phone, you first access the passcode or pattern or whatever, and then you access it. On some phones, they don't have that pattern. You can just access the phone, and then you go to Vault, and then you do whatever it is that you do with the password. So where we are going with this is the following. Our login page and our access page should be linked. So how are they linked? They're linked to say whatever user has been called upon, we then get those details. So those details then give us the name, the surname, and whatever else that we need. So in other words, we're then saying to get this information, we need to then also note that we then need to access database. And that's the first part about that user identification. So to get the user identification, we need to access the database. So the same applies for the next bit. We're then trying to get a course. For you to be able to say you are a student here, you need to have courses on it. And for this enrollment, you enrolled for courses. Some of you then went to computer center to actually access some elements that you're supposed to have. So one of the elements that you were supposed to have was a course. And then the next thing we have is course details. How can we address the course details? Copying from the previous one where we had user details. Course details. And how do you access it? Can we have some of the guys who are quiet? I'm a bit worried. It's either they are quiet because they are very much attentive, or they are lost somewhere. Right now, we're not doing any code. We're just discussing how our system is supposed to work. How can we put our courses? Yeah, some of you don't think I don't know your names, huh? Tabona privilege at Pina Gambo, the Pindo. Course code. Yes. Right. What else do we think do we need? Because all we are saying is we are trying to get everything that we will need from the system before we have the system. That's the idea of design. Design helps us in that when we're working with design, we are trying to figure out what exactly would we need. And the moment we know what we need, it is easier for us to then start working with the code. Because code, as you saw, is just a bunch of syntax. And that syntax, we can actually get it as many times as we want because we can just repeat it, right? One such instance will be as follows, right? Let's say a student called Papai has failed a subject called mathematics twice. And so in other words, we are saying we should be able to have 3 records of mathematics. The first time that I did mathematics and my mark. The second time that I did mathematics and my mark. The third time should not have a mark because I'm probably repeating it. So in other words, we're then saying, as you are designing your system, think about it in that manner. This student has actually redone mathematics for the third time. So each time that they've done mathematics, we should also have the course and the date. So in other words, when we're then dealing with the course, we then deal with the course code. We then deal with the course name. We then deal with the student enrolled in that course. And for another instance, let's say a student called John Banda. John Banda was part of Kate 12. John Banda dropped out, Kate 12 finished, Kate 13 started, Kate 14 started. John Banda then enrolls for Kate 14. We're now then saying it's still the same course, but it's now a different intake. So intake comes into play. Outside of the course, we've also got the intake. So we then need to at least understand what goes into designing our system, which is why some of these things are then important. Because if you don't include them in your design phase, you end up having a lot of work, but with that work, you can't then start fixing. So let's say, for example, we now have an incident where a student has to redo a course with a different class. We then also need to make sure that when we're designing it, we think about most of the probability. And then we have them run. I'm hoping I'm giving you a better picture of how we work with design. Because we want to do our design so that our design gives us the output that we're looking for. Right. So let's proceed. I'm just giving you pointers so that it makes better sense as we are doing what we are doing. So we've got our course code. What else do we need for our course? Simba, I know you've been paying attention. People, the next level. You've been very, very attentive. I was watching. Huh? After course code, what else can we have? Chigaze chi. Tungoona zviripo zviripo kudhara. Tochita madetails course. Izvo zviri kuita course yakanzi data something and something. I'm not sure to get the title. Yes. Yes, we can have the course description as well. What else? Ndaona Lina ada kutaura something. Pane zvaada kutaura. Ngataure tone Lini. Lini. Yeah. Thank you, Lynn. I've tried my assignment too. Thank you. Come, some assignment. Lynn, guys. Right. Let's have a few things that we can add to our course. We've got our course code. We've got our course description. What else can we add to our course? Yes. Course title. What else can we have? Guys. Okay. Someone has put. I think that's okay. Maybe let's have two more. Course confirmation. Ingashande the confirmation. Okay. All right. Let's have that. Okay. What else? Let's have one more. Shalini anditarisa kuno. Shalini. Okay, the type of course. Okay. All right. We can have that as well. But how can we put it? Because what she's saying is very possible to say in some instances you can choose the course. For example, you guys, I don't know if you had this added to your courses, but now as you enroll at the University of Zimbabwe, you are supposed to have one other course, which is a compulsory, but it's not the same course. So you are supposed to have a language. So a language is part of your courses, but it's like an optional, or you can actually choose an option of the language to do. So I don't know how we can put it down as a value. Maybe I try. Apana domba tele. A prosper wanyo nyala reason. Saurati. Today is it. We want to be able to put something that we can use or we can work. How can we actually put it? Because some of these questions you need to also be asking yourself as you are designing a system. To say we want to be able to have a course, but this course is not going to be uniform for everyone. So how best can we put it as a title? Or maybe rekandise nemchishoni. Toda kutaura kuti handiti munhu wese anofanira kuita 5 O levels. As aita 5 O levels, kutaura kuti toda maths, toda English, handiti toda pamwe maybe a science, tonida kana pamwe maybe a practical course, tonida kana the last one can be a choice of a science, an art, or a commercial subject. That is. So we then say, "Man, what is the tower? Tower for my option. My options that are cheap. To turn that from high school, time at my options. Co. Okay. Okay. You know, it runs the core course type. Can we put it that way? Let's work with it. To push to pass it out. And upon a right answer, upon a wrong answer. Yes. Yeah, but to that title, actually, we know what we want to do, but to that title, you just chances. There's a reason why it's important to have the title. It's important, faculty. If we then have the title, it is easier for us to design the system that does what the title says. So it is an optional course, but we then now need to just have a title that sums it up. So, for example, what he had said is we can say core course. We can then maybe come up with a title that gives us what that course should be. And then, so we can then say, for lack of a better word, we can then say courses on offer. Okay, I think for progress, we can leave it as that. And so at this particular instance, we are saying since we've got a course on offer, or since we've got courses on offer, we then now need to access database. Right? Why are we accessing database? We're accessing the database because we want to see the courses that are on offer. And from there, we are then going to coursework. We're then going to coursework. And the coursework will simply give us the course name and then the course work, mark, and coursework test, something along those lines. And it, so we need the course name, the coursework mark, the coursework test. And it, at the same time, we access the database. So maybe let's actually explain why we're doing it this way. We are saying each of the elements that we want to display, we are displaying them where the user sees. And it, but at the same time, we are then getting this information from somewhere, which is the database. So as we're doing it this way, we are designing our page, but we're also designing our database at the same time. So whilst we are doing this, we are then doing 2-in-1. It then means after this, we can then be able to say, let's create pages, let's create our database, and then our database should have the following information. And then that information, we can then be able to just put and then be able to call functions or whatever it is that we're wanting to work with until we get to the result that we are hoping for. And so at this point, we also access the database. Like that. And then the next bit is our student forum. How can that work? I'm sure we all know what student forums are. How can we work with a student forum? Tingereze kuma student forum. Student forum in essence is just a discussion platform whereby the Madagascar class we have topics. Our topic can be something related to our learning. Let's say we are saying, I'm having a problem with my login, and then you put your code, you then put your problem, and then people interact to sort of help you correct that code. So that is our student forum. If you go on your LMS, there's also that aspect. It's available on your LMS, whereby you can be able to actually go through your forum and see whatever options are available. So how can we actually include our student forum? Our work. Let's get into the system now. So we've got a school system, and that is what it looks like. The first page, like we said, is our login. So we want to design our login and some of the things that we want in our login. So we can put our heading. We can also put the content that comes with it, which is our input. We also have another input. We can have our input again, and then we have our button. So this then means we put whatever we want as our options. We have our, this is type equals text, and then we need a placeholder, which we say this is now our username. We can copy that and then just change a few things from it. This is now our password. This then becomes our password. Then at this particular point, we want a different type. And then we call this a checkbox. And then as it stands, I think our code is complete. So we've got our login, we've got our username, we've got our password, we've got our checkbox, we've got our login. So for our checkbox, maybe let's put a label outside of it. And our label, remember me. Right, we can just put it. But as we are designing, and tazotaura forgot kafuta handiti tazoti pane forgot password. So let's also put that and we proceed. Right. So as it stands, we now have our content as we have it. Maybe let's put those breaks, those page breaks, so that we can see what that looks like. Right. If we refresh, we'll be able to see what this gets. So we're going to use a name, we're going to password, we're going to remember me, we're going to forgot password. Right. So as it stands, we are good to go. But we forgot one important thing. What did we forget in our code? This is mainly revision. What did we forget in our code? If you look at our code, there's something that we left out. What did we leave out? There's something that we left out. Tasiachi. Sure. Okay, let us proceed. Right. Let's, yes. Sorry? Abasifane? Serious. But there's something that I serious. But anyway, I'm the umbe. Huh? Yeah. Hey, look on self-closing. You can use it like that as well. Isn't it? Right. So now we want to get into Sato chest. Is the Angangori Maru Gruber. Let's get into the stuff that we came from. The next thing that we want to do is we want to put our PHP on it. So our PHP, we can actually do it this way. Instead of actually having our PHP in this particular instance, we can then call our PHP to give us something, right? So we then say outside of this, I have a double checker problem. Let's try and see if we can open another one. Notepad inozongoti bhoyera manje kuti aite se haivhure multiple files. So we need to open another one and then we try and make sure it's giving us what we want to do. Right. So, like we said, remember we said PHP is a file, isn't it? And our file gives us whatever it is that we want it to give us. And this one. So we then want to see how we can create a PHP file and then include it in our HTML. So we can open and close tags. And then when we open and we close tags, we then put PHP. And then in our PHP, we can then also put our HTML tag. And then we put whatever we want in that tag. And within that tag, we can then also do the following. Like that. But chances are, okay, we've got that as our code. Chances are this code is wrong. Let's say this is our test.php. Chances are this is wrong, right? If you remember, we said our PHP is just scripting. So we can create a script and then call it in our HTML, and then our HTML will then give us whatever it is that we want to put. So we've put our PHP as that. We've created a test.php file. We've entered some information that we have done. And then we come to our login page. And then before our input type, we then want to put PHP script. And with our PHP script, we want to put the following. We want to put PHP, and then we want to say include _1. We then put our quotations. Then we want to put test.php. This is where it gets interesting. If we made an error in our test.php, it should then give us a result on our browser. So that is what we put within our code. We refresh, and there we go. There we go. The programming is started. Parse error, syntax error, unexpected ending of file in C, XAMPP, htdocs, school, test.php, line 2. Right. We are now at work. What do you think is the error? That is what our browser is saying. That is what our code is saying. So what is our problem? Yes. But tukumada ama paragraph text here. But tukumada ama paragraph. All right. I'm confused. Right. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Is you need to at least know what our error means and what we are supposed to actually achieve from our. So like he said it's like creators yes, and that was something in the room. So the people were, no, 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 no. But no, 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 no. Like, all we're simply saying now is, remember I said when we started this, we didn't have errors, and we need to know what those errors are. So how your PhD response is the moment you see that it's a past error. Usually we then give you a response to what that error is, right? So what parsing simply means is if we want to use the prefix, we then need to format the prefix into a syntax that PHP will understand. So in other words, it then means the B is not wrong. The tag is also not wrong. But the way we have put it is wrong. So what he's simply explaining now is the simplest form. He is saying, because we've got the end right, that is what we got the end. Zvimwe zvaazotaura izvo angangozowedzerawo zvake but zvaangari kungotaura zvona zvikoro zveangle bracket. So with what he's saying if we remove p tag yedu, we remove it. If we remove p tag yedu, we remove it. Tobva tasave. And this we save, we come back here, we refresh. Taita this. See this? Tababa. In the area we are going to put it back. We are saying with our error, PHP names it. Iuramba zvinhu zvatiri kuda kuti zviite. Hameo tingei. Right. We say, so this is my PHP code. And my PHP code looks like this. Right? When after correcting it, then gave me invalid details, and we said that's okay. And at the same time, let's actually just correct it. Kuno kutiso fute break so that we see what this gives us. Right? So I've gone back to my PHP. I've saved it with the error that it was giving me. I've also put a break there. If I come back to my school system, I refresh, I then get my error. parse error, syntax error, unexpected. This at the end of the file in this particular document on line number 2. So this is our document. This is our line number 1. This is our line number 2. So what it then means, this thing that it's complaining about, it's complaining about that. If we come to this, we can see that it exists there, right? So this angle bracket gave us a passing error. Maybe the question you might also have is, what is a passing error? It then simply means that our text, for it to recognize that angle bracket, it must be formatted in the manner that PHP accepts. So if we then look at our passing error, and if we look at our passing error and our echo, especially para kuna bani kudzika ku error yedu kuna bani pane zvinofana kana pane zvikufanana ngatisaure kuti kana pane zvikusiyana ngatisaure kuti we've got a pass error where it's a syntax error and it's an unexpected something at the end of the line, or rather at the end of the line. So pane zvetikuona ere zviri similar, zvetikuona not necessarily zvetikuziva. One way, I think Mahura. Right. So as we can see on the board, we are then being told that what is expected is anything that we want to display has to be in those single quotes. So anything outside of those single quotes, and we are being asked to display it will not run. So that is why we are getting that error. So the moment we remove what we don't expect, we'll be able to view our content. We've dwelt a little bit too much time on this. Let's proceed and add to our learning. Right? We click on save. So if we remove the P tag and we refresh, we'll be able to actually see what our PHP does. So those are some of the content or some of the content that we'll be able to use. Right. So now we want to go to the next part. The next part is, if you remember, we said we need to log in, right? So our login, before we get to login, we need to post. And we need to have an action. Where do we put our post? Where do we put our action? In our input. We did this in the last lesson, which was yesterday. No, the day before yesterday. We mentioned something about a post. We mentioned something about an action. And in the videos it's there. What did we say? Was we need to put a post method. No is up. Perform check. Saka post perform check. Iro risipo. Ndomubvunzo ndambobvunza apa. Mukati hamusi kuziva. Handimati hamusi kuziva. pane zvakare mukati hamusi kuziva. Saka tikuda form tag. Form tag redu toriwana patoriisa pano. So ingariise pa form tag redu. Alright, ndakuriisa pandiri kufunga. Tione kuti zvinobuda. Right, takuisa form tag redu pano. Toisa form tag redu pano. Tora. Pana manhudzo tinoenda pano. Right, I think it's not this. This way. Zvinoita here. Last time takatiisa pano. Saka hamusi kudzokorora zvinhu zvetinenge taita. Hamusi kuzvidzokorora. And tichazosangana kuti next week. Hamtikanganwa zvatakaita in the last lesson. For next week tienda swika. Ngatite tichipractice handiti. Ndauda kuraunda apo timboshandisa makombiyuta. Because hatisi kumashandisa clearly. That's what it's actually showing. We need to practice as much as is possible. So that's no pain. Inooneka practice hazvipinde zvimwe. Zvinotengeswa pamusoro kuti ndakanganisa nepano. Because hatisi kupractice. So pandaisa form tag apa paiswi form tag. Because it's outside of body. Body takati inoita nezvezvo. Tambotaura nezvayo. Takati inoita nezvo. Hamuchaziva futi. Right. Tikaenda paform pedu tobva tati method equals post. Like that. So, what is the next thing? The next thing that we want to do is we can also add more than one file. And Petaisa file redu apa is not the only place where we can put our PHP tag. We can also put our PHP tag before HTML, whereby we then say we want to include something. Let's say this time we do something that doesn't exist. Right? This time we then say we want to include database.php, and we also need to put the same concept, include underscore once. Include once, database.php, click on save, we refresh, we then get that. So it's now giving us a warning. Include once database PHP failed to open stream. No such file or directory in the following folder on line 1. Warning, include once. Failed opening database PHP for inclusion. Path C++, C, XAMPP, PHP, P, at C, whatever, school, index.php on line 1. Targeting error, right? Yes. Okay. Munhu wana angotaura ndakudzidzisa munhu wane. Natande chikupindirawo shamwari. Makubhuwa muklasi macho. Mune munhu wani chete. Hamenozotaura nemukomana uyu. Zvandikonfyuzawo. Ndibatsirawo kutsanangura kuti ati. Era iri nani zvimwe zvinhu zvedu hazvina kutisa. Iyi era yati nyare. We then needed to have include function. So include stdio and then include stdio.h, include whatever it is that we need to do, and those files exist. So the moment that those files don't exist, we then now need to create those files. And those files, they are created by us for the purpose of whatever it is that we want to that and work. So at this particular point in time, when they say we are supposed to create a file called database.php, whereby we will then be talking about our database. If we go back to our design, we said we need a database. So in other words, we are breaking it down to say, how do we get to the next stage and the next stage and the next stage and the stage after that until we get to what we want to get. So that's how we build and work with what we want to work with until we get a conclusion. Let's work on it some more. So far, we've got two files. We've got our test.php, and we also want to have a database.php. So we can include as many files as is possible. So one website can actually have as many as 1,000 different files connecting to that particular website. Is that a question over there? Okay, so let's proceed. We want to save now our database.php. So go to all files and then we call database.php like that. We click on save and then tiny database.php in our files. Let's refresh. Just like that. So we have the error because we do not have database.php. We don't have the error because we now have database.php. But database.php has nothing. So we need to then put information in database.php. That's where now what we learned previously about the variables comes into play. Remember, we said we've got variables, and also we mentioned post as a variable. So post is a variable that we can actually then work with. But for now, we don't want posts. We want to work with database.php. So we then want to put the following. And in the following, we want to have some stuff. So one such variable we can have is a connection. We can also have a username, which can be name, and then if we refresh our school system, we don't see any problem because everything is in order. And then, right. So, what do we want to do next? We want to create a database for this, right? And our database should contain at least some fields. We want to go to our local host and then PHP myadmin. Under PHP myadmin, we then want to create our database. I'm going to have to reduce this because I can't see. Right. So we create a database. We've done this before. We go to new and then call it school DB. Where are we getting school DB? If we come back here, we actually said we want our database to be school DB. So that's where we're getting our school DB. We come to our local host, we paste our school DB, we then go on create. Under create, we then say we want 3 columns, and then we want the name of the table to be users. We click on create, and then we start with ID. We have username. We have password. So we can put our values for this particular attribute. We say this is auto increment, and we make that a primary key. We click on go. Oh, sorry, I clicked on the wrong one. Click on save, and then we are good to go. The next thing we will do is we'll just add a user. And for this particular instance, we just put admin. We also put admin. We click on go, and then we've added our user. So our user is admin. From there, we now want to create our database. So we open our database from our files, and then we want to then put our code. So we want to create our code, and our code should be as follows. I'll copy that line. No, let's not copy it. Let's do it manually. We want to create our variable. We said our variable is const is equal to, it's my SQL. Yes, underscore connect, user. And then my brackets eliminate. Vima mchizoona guys. Nanzi ndokudzidza. Ndibatsire. chii chinouya next guys, tabva kuzviita. Yes, 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 answer yangu chi. All right, saka toti localhost pouya chi root chi. Chii chinonzi root, ndachitaura manje manje. Chii chinonzi root? Huh? First are two mark quotations. Then the last thing chi. Ndakuisa zvandangoisa. Ndizvo here? Kana kuti ai sei zvisiri izvo? Database randacreata ndeiri kai? Handiti? Ndizvo? Saka apa pataisa database iri, saka ndizvo here? Saka tofanoisa chi? Sei? Why tikuisa school? Sei tiri kuisa school? Ndozita redatabase redu. All right. Aiwa, hazina kushata. The next line toda kuisa if statement yedu. Indingokutangira ipapo payo chete. Ndinotandipedzisira the rest. Chii chatazoisa mukati? Aiwa, vamba pasina connection failed chete. Pamba tori nelist yezvimwe zvinhu. Tanyora kuti chii? Tanyora kuti chii? Guys, tanga tichizviita tese manje manje apa. Yes. Tati chii? Guys. Tinoba tidzokorodza zvandakurakidzai. Anombokubhaizai ndatitanga kuita zvinhu zvePHP zvazvo zvatakafambira. Alright, ngatimbosevha yakadai so inobudisa chinhu. Tasevha handiti tomborefresh. Haina kutipa maproblem. Saka zvinhu zvedu zviri chi? Zviri okay. Asi zvinoda kupedzisa. So, I think with this we can stop our